Hello guys and welcome back to another video of Architects 3DP.
This is the 6th episode of the Build the Best DIY 3D printer series. Today we're going to build the X-axis structure, letting it ready to install all the electronic components and moving parts next week. And at the end of the video you will end up having this nice result.
Now I'm going to show you the components that we'll need for this part of the printer, but before starting, be sure to subscribe and to ring that bell to be notified when cool stuff is uploaded. If you do it, you will help me creating new content and growing the channel to reach more special viewers like you. Alright, so the components that we will need to build this part of the printer are the next.
First, for 3D printed parts, the X-axis carriage, the moving part that will hold our extruder in place, the X-end motor, and the X-end idler. Notice that I have modified the 3D models for both X-ends, motor and idler, to fit the alternative components that I bought in place.
I will upload both the original STL files created by Prusa 3D and also my modified ones, and you will be able to download them from the link in the description.
These X-ends will form the structure of the X-axis, and at the same time, they will be the moving parts through the Z-axis, so the whole X-axis will move up and down through the Z-axis of the printer. If we have a closer look, we can see that I have modified the holes that will hold the nuts for the Z threaded rods in place. So the threaded rods and nuts that I bought from Amazon will fit it in place precisely.
Apart from the 3D printed components, we'll also need some hardware that we'll have to buy. I will let you my affiliate links down in the description so you can buy them while helping the channel if you want.
The needed hardware components are 2 370mm 8mm smooth rods, 3 LM8UU linear bearings for the X movement, 4 LM8UU linear bearings for the Z movement, 2 M3 square nuts, 2 M3 by 10mm screws for the tensioning mechanism, 2 M3 hex nuts, 2 M3 12mm screws for the Z-axis nuts, 1 M3 hex nut for the carriage, and finally a bunch of small zip ties. Once we have all the components ready, the first step will be to introduce the 4 LM8UU linear bearings inside the holes meant for it on the X-end motor and idler. They should fit tightly inside of the gaps meant for it, making it a solid build. It is important that you insert the linear bearings rotating them 45 degrees, so the friction with the linear rods will be more stable. Once we have inserted the bearings in place, the next step will be to prepare the tensioning mechanism, what will allow us to adjust the tension once the electronics are installed in place. It is composed by a couple M3NS square nuts and M3 10mm screws. So first step will be to insert the nut in the embedded gap meant for it. And next we'll insert the M3 10mm screw through its hole, and then screw it in place without tightening it. Next we'll repeat the process with the other screw and nut. The last step for this X-end idler will be to install the copper nut that will actuate in the Z-axis. By the way, I bought a pack of Amazon that includes the threaded rods and the nuts that has a good quality at a reasonable price. You will find them linked down below. Okay, so first we'll insert the M3 X nut in the embedded gaps. We can use a pair of tweezers. Once set, we'll insert the copper nut, making sure you align the hole with the nuts, and finally we'll screw it in place with the two 12mm M3 bolts. At this point we have completed the X-end idler build, and now we just have to follow the same steps in the X-end motor holder piece. First insert the linear bearings, then the embedded nuts, then the embedded hex nuts to hold the Z-axis nuts, and finally screw it in place. Now we're going to pick up the X carriage and we're going to embed this hex nut in place.
Anyways, this step can be done later, so don't worry if you don't do it now.
Next we'll insert the 6 zip ties through the tunnels meant for it, and place the 3 linear bearings in its position, finally pulling from them with the help of a pair of pliers. Once everything is strongly attached, we'll cut the end of the zip ties using a pair of scissors, and the last step will be to just assemble each of the 3 components we pre-assembled together using the 370mm smooth rods. So first we'll insert the carry in place, and then the 2 ends, but be careful and pay attention to the correct orientation of the components.
Okay guys, so that has been everything for this short episode.
As you can see, we have the carriage moving smoothly, and in the next episode we'll install all the electronic components.
Remember that you will have the links in the description to download all the modified STL files, as well as the links to buy all the hardware through our affiliate links on Amazon. If you still don't have a 3D printer to print all the 3D printed parts yourself, you can contact me by email through my address architects3dp@gmail.com.
Finally, I'm going to make, as always, a recap of all the components we used for this build. First, for 3D printed parts, the X-axis carriage, the moving part that will hold our extruder in place, the X-end motor, and the X-end idler. Then, the needed hardware components are 2 370 8mm smooth rods, 7 LM8UU linear bearings for the X and Z movement, 2 M3 square nuts, 2 M3 10mm screws for the tensioning mechanism, 2 M3 hex nuts and 2 M3 12mm screws for the Z-axis nuts, 1 M3 hex nut for the carriage, and finally a bunch of small zip ties. In the next episode, we'll add to the X-axis structure all the electronics and cable management necessary for it to work properly once we assemble the 3D printer.
So be sure to subscribe and to ring that bell to be notified when cool stuff is uploaded. Hit the like button if you liked the video, leave a comment, and share this episode so more people will be able to learn with the project. Finally, I just wanted to give a special thanks to all of you, and especially to our Patreon supporters for continuing to make this channel possible. If you want to join them and support the channel as well, getting nice rewards and making me super happy, you can do it navigating to patreon.com/architects3dp or clicking here in the top right corner. Okay guys, so as always, see you in the next video.